I purchased my dream home quietly and didn't tell a single person. Then a neighbor called and said, "There are people inside your house." I opened my security app and saw my sister's family partying in my living room. That's when I immediately called the police. You know that feeling when your entire world shifts in an instant? That moment of pure, unadulterated disbelief that makes your stomach drop? Yeah, I lived that. I was sitting at my desk, minding my own business, when I saw my own sister and her family, pizza boxes strewn, celebrating in my brand new, empty dream home, like they owned the place. And I realized right then, my life and my family would never be the same. My name is Sandy, and this is the story of how my sister Jessica absolutely shattered our family relationship in the most spectacular, heartbreaking way possible. To truly get it, you need a little backstory. I'm 32, I work in tech consulting, and for the past 8 years, I've been saving every single penny. Why? For the house. Not just a dream home, but the dream home. A stunning Victorian on Maple Street that had captivated me since 2017. Every time I drove by, I pictured myself there, hosting dinner parties, maybe even starting a family. This house belonged to Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who'd lived there for 60 years. It was magnificent, 3 stories, original hardwood floors, stained glass, a wraparound porch, and a garden straight out of a fairy tale. I was obsessed. So, when Mrs. Patterson passed away and the house hit the market in March, I knew this was my chance. The asking price was steep, $485,000, but I'd saved aggressively. I had my 20% down payment, plus closing costs. I was ready. Now, my family dynamics. My sister, Jessica, is 2 years older than me. She's married to Mike, and they have 7-year-old twin boys, Ethan and Mason. Jessica works part-time as a dental hygienist, and Mike's a mechanic. They're good people, but they've always struggled. They live in a small rental and constantly talked about buying a house, but could never save up. Here's the thing about Jessica, she's always been competitive. If I got something, she had to have it too, usually bigger or better. My college graduation? She'd boast about making real money right out of high school. My first promotion? Suddenly, she was talking about going back to school. It wasn't exactly malicious, but there was always this suffocating undercurrent of comparison. I knew if I told my family about the house before closing, it would be a disaster. Jessica would either try to talk me out of it, too expensive, too big for one person, or she'd complain about how unfair it was that I could afford it and she couldn't. And my parents? They'd probably side with her. They've always been incredibly protective of Jessica because of her financial struggles, especially after the twins. So, I made a unilateral decision, complete secrecy. I put in the offer, got pre-approved, handled the inspection, all the paperwork, without telling a single soul in my family. Only my real estate agent, mortgage broker, and my best friend, Katie, knew. Katie swore to secrecy. Closing was set for Friday, May 15th. Everything went perfectly. By 3 p.m., I was officially the owner. I took the day off, and after signing, I drove to the house. I just sat in my car, staring. My house. I couldn't believe it. I planned to tell my family that weekend, invite them for dinner Sunday, and surprise them with the news, champagne ready. But life, as it always does, had other plans. I'd arranged for a security system to be installed the following Monday. The house had an old, defunct alarm, so I hired Secure Home. They put in new cameras and sensors everywhere, entrances, main living areas, exterior. By Wednesday morning, I had full remote monitoring from my phone. It was overkill, maybe, but this was my biggest investment. Plus, I hadn't moved in yet, I wanted to paint and do minor repairs, so being able to check on it remotely gave me peace of mind. Then came Thursday evening. I was working late when my phone rang. Unknown number. I usually ignore them, but something made me answer. Hello? Is this the new owner of 447 Maple Street? It was an older man. Yes, this is Sandy. Who is this? This is Robert Chen. I live next door. I wanted to introduce myself, and also let you know there are people in your house right now. My heart stopped. What do you mean, people in my house? Well, there's a car in your driveway, lights are on, and I've seen people moving around. I thought maybe you had family staying, but I wanted to check. I thanked Mr. Chen, hung up, and with shaking hands, opened the security app. I pulled up the live feeds, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There were people in my house all right. And I recognized them. It was Jessica, Mike, and the twins. They weren't just inside. They were celebrating. The living room camera showed pizza boxes and soda bottles scattered across my beautiful original hardwood floors. The twins were running wild. Jessica was taking pictures, posing in front of the fireplace like she owned the place. I watched, horrified, as she gestured dramatically, giving a tour to an empty room. Mike was sprawled on the floor, no furniture yet, remember, drinking a beer. The twins chased each other, room to room. But the absolute worst part? When I switched to the kitchen camera. Jessica was on a video call, holding her phone up, giving a virtual tour of my kitchen, my house, talking and laughing like she belonged there. I was shaking with anger, but also utterly confused. How did they get in? I hadn't given anyone keys. I hadn't told anyone I bought the house. How did they even know? I called Jessica. Straight to voicemail. Mike's phone. Same. They were ignoring me. That's when I snapped. These people were trespassing. Family or not, they had broken into my property without permission. They were acting like it was theirs. I called 911. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report a break-in. There are people inside my house without permission. Are you currently at the location, ma'am? No, I'm at my office, but I can see them through my security cameras. 2 adults, 2 children. I don't know how they got in, but they don't have permission to be there. The dispatcher took my info, the address, and said officers were on their way. I told them I'd meet them there. The drive from my office to Maple Street felt like an eternity. I kept checking the security app at every red light, watching my sister's family continue their unauthorized celebration. At one point, I saw Jessica lying on the floor of what would be the master bedroom, arms spread wide, like she was making snow angels. When I arrived, 2 police cars were already there. Jessica's minivan was parked on the street. My front door was open, and I could hear voices inside. Officer Martinez met me. Are you Sandy Williams? Yes, that's me. This is my house. Those people inside, they don't have permission. Ma'am, we'll need to see some documentation that you own this property. I ran to my car, grabbed the closing paperwork. As I did, I heard Jessica's voice from inside, growing louder, more agitated. There has to be some mistake. Sandy doesn't own a house. She lives in an apartment. When I returned with the deed, Officer Martinez reviewed it carefully. It was clearly in my name, dated just 6 days prior. The people inside claim they're your family, ma'am, he said. They say there's been a misunderstanding. They are my family. That's my sister, her husband, and their kids. But I never gave them permission to be in my house. I never even told them I bought it. Just then, Jessica appeared in the doorway. The look on her face when she saw me, I'll never forget it. Shock, anger, and something that looked almost like betrayal. Sandy, what the hell is going on? Why are the police here? The question is, what are you doing in my house, Jessica? How did you even get in here? Your house? What do you mean, your house? I handed her a copy of the deed. I watched her face as she read it, saw the precise moment it clicked that I actually owned the property. You bought this house, when? Why didn't you tell me? I closed on Friday. And I didn't tell you because I knew you'd react exactly like this. Officer Martinez stepped in. Ma'am, he said to Jessica, you need to gather your belongings and leave the property. You're trespassing. Trespassing? This is my sister. There has to be some kind of mistake. Mike appeared behind Jessica, holding the twins' hands. The boys looked scared and confused. What's happening? Why are the police here? Sandy bought this house and didn't tell us. Jessica's voice was high, strained. She's having us arrested. I'm not having you arrested, I said. I just want you out of my house. You broke in here without permission. We didn't break in. Jessica protested. The realtor let us in. That stopped me cold. What realtor? Linda Morrison from Century 21. She said you asked her to show us the house. I knew Linda. She was the listing agent. But why would she think I wanted to show my sister the house? Officer Martinez asked Jessica to call Linda Morrison right then and there. Jessica dialed on speakerphone. Hi, Linda. It's Jessica Williams. I'm at the house on Maple Street with the police, and there seems to be some confusion. Linda's voice came through clearly. Oh my goodness, what's wrong? Well, my sister is here, and she's saying she owns the house, and we're trespassing, but you said she asked you to show it to us. There was a long, awkward pause on Linda's end. Then, Jessica, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. I never spoke to Sandy about showing you the house. When you called me this afternoon and said you were Sandy Williams, and you wanted me to show the property to your sister's family, I thought. Oh no. Oh no. I think I made a terrible mistake. The pieces clicked into place, cold and sharp. Jessica had called Linda Morrison, pretended to be me, and asked Linda to show her sister's family the house. Linda assumed I was calling to let my sister in. You impersonated me? I stared at Jessica in disbelief. Her face was bright red. I didn't impersonate you. I just said I was Sandy Williams because that's my maiden name, too. I thought there might have been some mistake about who bought the house. Your maiden name is Williams because we are sisters, Jessica. You called, pretending to be me, to get access to my house. The police officers exchanged glances. Officer Martinez turned back to Jessica. Ma'am, what you're describing could be considered fraud. It's not fraud. I genuinely thought there had been a mistake. When I saw on the county records website that a Sandy Williams had bought this house, I thought maybe there was some clerical error or something. I thought maybe our names got mixed up. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So, you decided to call the realtor, pretend to be me, and break into the house to what? Check for a clerical error? We weren't breaking in. We had permission from the realtor. Permission you got by lying about who you were? Mike finally spoke up, looking thoroughly uncomfortable. Sandy, look, I think this got out of hand. Jessica was just excited because she thought maybe somehow you had bought this house for all of us or something. You know how she gets about family. How I get about family? Jessica exploded, her voice trembling with fury. I care about family, unlike some people who buy their dream house and don't even tell their own sister. And there it was. The real issue. Not that she had illegally accessed my house. She was mad that I hadn't included her in my house purchase. Jessica, I bought this house with my money that I saved for 8 years. Why would I buy it for all of us? Because that's what family does. They share big moments. They don't sneak around and hide things. Officer Martinez cleared his throat. Ladies, we need to resolve the immediate situation. Ma'am, he said to Jessica, regardless of the misunderstanding with the realtor, you need to leave the property now. Jessica, still fuming, gathered the twins and their belongings, all the while arguing with me. I can't believe you're doing this, Sandy. I can't believe you called the police on your own family. I can't believe you'd break into my house. We didn't break in. You committed fraud to gain access. That's worse than breaking in. As they were leaving, Jessica turned back to me one last time, her eyes blazing. You know what, Sandy? I always knew you thought you were better than us, but I never thought you'd prove it like this. That comment hit me harder than I expected. This isn't about being better than anyone, Jess. This is about boundaries. This is about you respecting that I'm an adult who can make her own decisions without consulting you. Fine. Don't come crying to me when you're sitting alone in your big, fancy house with no family around. And with that, they were gone. The officers finished taking my statement and left. I stood in my beautiful, empty dream house, looking at the pizza boxes and soda spills on my pristine hardwood floors. I felt completely deflated. But the story, believe me, does not end there. Over the next few days, my phone blew up. Calls and texts from my parents, cousins, aunts. They were all furious with me for calling the police on Jessica, for embarrassing the family. Jessica had, of course, told everyone her version of events, painting herself as the victim of a simple misunderstanding, and me as the cruel, heartless sister who had her arrested for an innocent mistake. I tried to explain, but Jessica's narrative was far more compelling to them. In her story, she was merely confused about paperwork and asked to see the house, and I, maliciously, called the police instead of having a normal conversation. My mother called me crying. "Sandy, how could you do this to your sister? She's been so upset." The twins are asking why Aunt Sandy called the police on them. "Mom, she impersonated me to gain access to my house. She committed fraud. She made a mistake. She thought there had been some kind of mix-up. You could have just talked to her. I tried calling her when I saw them in the house. She ignored my calls because she was embarrassed about the confusion. It was hopeless. No matter how I explained it, my family saw Jessica as the victim and me, the villain. But then, something interesting happened. Remember how Jessica was taking pictures and videos, and giving that video call tour? Well, it turns out she had posted everything on social media. My friend Katie called me 3 days later. "Sandy, you need to see Jessica's Facebook page." I didn't have Jessica on social media. We'd unfriended each other years ago after a political argument, but Katie screenshotted everything and sent it to me. Jessica had posted dozens of photos from inside my house, with captions like, "Touring my dream home and can't wait to make this place ours," and "The kids are so excited about their new rooms." But the most damning was the video she'd taken, the one I saw on my security camera. In it, she was clearly talking as if she owned the house, or was about to buy it. "This is going to be our master bedroom. I can't wait to host Thanksgiving here. Mike is going to love watching football in this living room." Katie had also found posts from earlier that day, before Jessica even went to the house, where she was talking about finally getting the house we deserve and sometimes things just work out the way they're supposed to. This wasn't someone confused about paperwork. This was someone who had convinced herself that she somehow deserved my house, or that there had been some cosmic mistake that needed correcting. I screenshotted everything. Saved it. Then I dug deeper. I called Linda Morrison, the realtor, and asked her to walk me through exactly what had happened when Jessica called her. She called around 1 p.m. on Thursday, Linda told me. She said, "Hi, this is Sandy Williams. I just closed on 447 Maple Street last Friday." That part was accurate, so I didn't question it. Then she said, "I'd like to arrange for you to show the house to my sister Jessica and her family this afternoon so they can see what I bought." She gave me Jessica's cell number and said Jessica would call me to coordinate. "And Jessica called you directly after that?" "Yes, about 20 minutes later. She said, 'Hi, this is Jessica. Sandy Williams asked you to show me and my family the house on Maple Street.' She was very polite, seemed excited. I met them at the house at 3 p.m. and let them in." "How long did you stay with them?" I asked. "That's the thing. I didn't stay. Jessica told me that you had said they could spend some time in the house alone to really get a feel for it, and that they would lock up when they left. She said you were planning to join them later, but were stuck at work. Since you were the owner, I didn't see any problem with that." So, Jessica had not only impersonated me to gain access, but she had also lied to get the realtor to leave them alone in the property. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. This was a calculated plan. Armed with this information, I decided to take action. First, I called my parents and asked them to come to my apartment so I could show them everything: the social media posts, the timeline of events, and the security footage from my cameras. Watching the security footage was particularly eye-opening for them. They could see Jessica and her family acting like they owned the place, not like confused people trying to figure out a paperwork mistake. They saw Jessica posing for photos, Mike drinking beer in my living room, and the kids running around unsupervised. "She really thought she was going to get the house somehow," my mother said quietly after watching the footage. "But how did she think that was going to work?" I showed them the social media posts, especially the ones from earlier in the day, talking about finally getting the house we deserve. My father shook his head. "I think Jessica convinced herself that because you hadn't told us about the house, maybe it wasn't real, or maybe there had been some kind of mistake. Or maybe she thought I had bought it for the whole family and just hadn't told anyone yet," I added. "That doesn't make any sense." My mother said, "It makes sense if you're Jessica, and you've convinced yourself that your little sister couldn't possibly afford something you can't afford." That conversation with my parents was a turning point. They finally understood that Jessica hadn't made an innocent mistake. She had acted deliberately and deceptively. But Jessica wasn't done. The following week, I got a call from my mortgage company. Someone had called claiming to be me, asking about adding additional borrowers to the loan. Then, a call from the county clerk's office. Someone had come in asking about property records for 447 Maple Street, again claiming to be the owner. Jessica was still trying to find some way to get her hands on my house. That's when I decided: legal action. I consulted with a lawyer specializing in real estate and family law. I explained the whole situation: the impersonation, the fraud, the social media posts, the continued harassment. "You have a strong case," the lawyer told me. "What she did constitutes identity theft, fraud, and trespassing, at a minimum. The fact that she's continuing to harass you by calling your mortgage company and the county clerk shows a pattern of behavior that a judge would take seriously." I filed a restraining order against Jessica, prohibiting her from coming to my property, contacting my mortgage company or any other institutions related to my home purchase, and requiring her to stay at least 500 feet away from me. I also filed a civil lawsuit seeking damages for the cost of changing my security system, since she'd been inside and could have copied keys or disabled alarms, the cost of legal proceedings, and compensation for emotional distress. When Jessica was served with the papers, she lost it completely. She started calling me from different phone numbers, violating the restraining order, leaving voicemails screaming about how I was destroying the family and how I was a selfish witch who would rather sue her own sister than share her good fortune. Each voicemail was forwarded to my lawyer and added to the evidence file. But before I get to the court case, I need to tell you about everything that happened in between, because Jessica's behavior got so much worse. After I filed the restraining order, Jessica seemed to take it as a personal challenge. The very next day, after she was served, I started getting anonymous calls to my work phone. The caller would hang up as soon as I answered, but I recognized Jessica's breathing pattern. We'd shared a room for 16 years, after all. Then, my neighbors started getting visits. Mrs. Patterson's old neighbor, Robert Chen, the one who'd originally called to warn me about the intruders, called me. A woman matching Jessica's description, he said, had come to his door asking about the new owner of the house next door. "She said she was your cousin and that there had been some family emergency," he told me. "She wanted to know if you were home, what kind of car you drove, what your work schedule was like." He'd told her he wasn't comfortable sharing that information, and she'd gotten very agitated. I immediately called my lawyer. A clear violation, but proving it was Jessica would be hard since Mr. Chen had never met her before. But Jessica made a mistake. She also visited Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived across the street. Mrs. Rodriguez had actually met Jessica during the original incident. She'd been walking her dog when the police cars arrived and had seen the whole confrontation. That woman came to my door yesterday, Mrs. Rodriguez told me when I ran into her at the mailbox, the same one from that night with the police. She was asking about you, but she pretended she didn't remember me. She acted like we'd never met. I asked Mrs. Rodriguez if she would be willing to give a statement to my lawyer, and she agreed. She was quite upset about Jessica's behavior. I have daughters, she said. If someone was harassing one of my daughters like that, I'd want the neighbors to speak up. Around the same time, I started noticing things around my property that seemed off. My garden hose had been moved. The gate latch was in a different position. Small things, but enough to make me paranoid. I checked my security footage. Sure enough, someone had been on my property in the middle of the night. The cameras caught a figure moving around the backyard, but they were wearing dark clothing and a hood. I couldn't make out who it was. I enhanced the security system, adding motion-detecting floodlights and more cameras. The next time someone came onto my property at night, I'd have better footage. I didn't have to wait long. 3 nights later, the motion lights lit up my backyard like a football stadium. I was asleep, but my phone buzzed with an alert. I opened the app and watched in real time as Jessica walked across my back patio, peering through windows, trying door handles. She had no idea she was being recorded. I watched her try the back door, then move to the kitchen window, cupping her hands against the glass to look inside. She walked around the entire perimeter of the house, checking every window and door. At one point, she sat down on my back steps and just stared at the house for almost 10 minutes. Even through the grainy night vision camera, I could see her shoulders shaking. She was crying. A part of me felt bad for her in that moment. This was my sister, and she was clearly in pain. But then I remembered the social media posts, the lies to the realtor, the fraudulent calls to my mortgage company. This wasn't grief. This was obsession. I called 911 and reported the violation of the restraining order. The police arrived within minutes, but Jessica was gone by then. However, I had crystal clear footage of her face when she'd looked directly into one of the cameras while trying the kitchen window. The police took copies of the footage, and Jessica was arrested at her house 2 hours later. This time, there was no ambiguity. She had clearly violated the restraining order, and there was video evidence to prove it. But Jessica's arrest caused an even bigger explosion in my family. My Aunt Carol, Jessica's godmother, called me screaming. "How dare you have your sister arrested? She's the mother of 2 small children. Aunt Carol, she broke into my property in the middle of the night. She violated a court order. She was probably just confused and upset. You're destroying this family over a house. I'm protecting myself from someone who has been stalking and harassing me." Stalking? She's your sister. Family doesn't stalk family. But that's exactly what it was. Stalking. Jessica was watching my house, following my routine, talking to my neighbors, trespassing on my property. The fact that we were related didn't make it less creepy or less illegal. My cousin Mark, Carol's son, sent me a long text message about how I was tearing the family apart and how Jessica just needed help, not punishment. He said I should drop all the charges and work things out like adults. I replied with screenshots of Jessica's social media posts from the day she broke into my house, the ones where she was talking about finally getting the house we deserve and calling it our new home. I asked Mark to explain how any of that indicated someone who just needed help, rather than someone who was delusional and potentially dangerous. Mark never responded. Meanwhile, Jessica was released on bail, but now she had additional charges: violation of a restraining order and criminal trespassing. Her public defender was trying to get her to take a plea deal, but according to my lawyer, Jessica was refusing. She seems to believe she's going to be vindicated somehow, my attorney told me. Her lawyer says she keeps insisting that the house should be hers, and that you're the one who did something wrong. What does that even mean? I think she's hoping that if she goes to trial, somehow a judge will see things her way and decide that you were wrong to buy the house without telling your family. That's when I realized that Jessica had completely lost touch with reality. She seemed to believe that my dream house was somehow supposed to be hers, and that all the evidence against her would magically disappear if she just held out long enough. The situation got even more surreal when Mike called me. "Sandy, you have to help me," he pleaded. "Jessica is talking about representing herself in court. She fired the public defender." "What? Why would she do that?" "She thinks the lawyer isn't fighting hard enough for her. She's convinced that if she can just explain to the judge what really happened, everything will be fine." "Mike, what does she think really happened?" "There's video evidence of her breaking into my house and violating the restraining order. She says you set her up. She thinks you bought the house specifically to hurt her, and that you recorded everything to make her look bad." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Set her up, Mike? I didn't even know she knew about the house when she broke in. "I know, Sandy. I know it doesn't make sense, but she's not thinking clearly right now. She's obsessed with this house. She drives by it every day on her way to and from work, even though it's not the most direct route. She has pictures of it saved on her phone from when she was inside. She talks about it constantly." "Mike, that's not normal behavior." "I know it's not normal. That's why I'm calling you. She needs help, but she won't listen to me. Maybe if the charges were dropped, she could get therapy instead of going to jail." "The charges aren't getting dropped, Mike. She committed crimes. Multiple crimes. But she's sick, Sandy. Can't you see that?" That conversation was another turning point for me. Mike was right. Jessica was sick. But she was also dangerous, and she had shown no remorse for her actions. If anything, she was doubling down on her delusion that the house should be hers. I realized that my family's approach, treating this as a misunderstanding or a family dispute, was actually enabling Jessica's behavior. By refusing to acknowledge that what she did was criminal, they were reinforcing her belief that she was the victim. The next few weeks were a nightmare of family drama. Jessica's supporters in the family organized what they called an intervention, where they all planned to come to my apartment and convince me to drop the charges. I found out about it from my cousin Lisa, who disagreed with the plan and warned me. "They're coming over Sunday afternoon," she told me. "Aunt Carol, Uncle Bob, Jessica's mother-in-law, and a few others. They think if they all show up together, they can pressure you into changing your mind." Instead of being home for their ambush, I spent the day at Katie's house. I let them ring my doorbell and knock on my door while I watched a movie and ate ice cream on my best friend's couch. Katie was furious on my behalf. "I can't believe they think they can gang up on you like that. What kind of family does that?" "The kind of family that thinks Jessica can do no wrong," I said. "Have any of them even asked to see the evidence? The videos, the social media posts, any of it?" "No, they don't want to see it. They've decided that I'm the villain, and they don't want anything to complicate that narrative." That evening, I got a series of angry voicemails and text messages from the family members who had shown up. They were upset that I had wasted their time and refused to face the family. Aunt Carol's voicemail was particularly nasty. "Sandy, you are being selfish and cruel. Your sister made a mistake, and instead of helping her, you're trying to destroy her life. Don't bother coming to any family events until you fix this mess you've created." I saved all the voicemails and forwarded them to my lawyer. The harassment from my extended family was getting almost as bad as the harassment from Jessica herself. But not everyone in my family was against me. My cousin Lisa started digging into Jessica's behavior and discovered things even I didn't know about. "Sandy, did you know that Jessica has been telling people at her work that she's about to buy a big house?" Lisa asked me during a phone call. "What?" "My friend Dana works at the same dental office as Jessica. Dana said Jessica has been talking for weeks about how she's getting a Victorian house with a big yard for the twins. She's been showing people pictures on her phone." "Pictures of my house?" "Yeah, the ones she took when she broke in. But she's been telling people she's buying it." This was getting more and more disturbing. Jessica wasn't just obsessed with my house, she was living in a complete fantasy where she was actually purchasing it. There's more, Lisa continued. Dana said Jessica asked to switch to more hours at work because she was going to need more money for mortgage payments. The office manager has been trying to accommodate her request because they thought she was genuinely buying a house. So, she's been lying to her coworkers, too. It gets worse. Dana said Jessica even brought in paint samples and fabric swatches to show people the decorating plans for her new house. She's been acting like the purchase is a done deal. I felt sick to my stomach. Jessica wasn't just harassing me. She was living in a full-blown delusion. She had convinced herself so thoroughly that my house was supposed to be hers, that she was making plans as if she actually owned it. When I shared this information with my lawyer, he was concerned enough to request a psychological evaluation for Jessica before the trial. This level of delusional thinking could indicate a serious mental health issue, he told me. If she's truly convinced that she has a right to your property, she might be a danger to herself or others. The psychological evaluation revealed that Jessica was indeed suffering from what the psychologist called a delusional disorder. She had created an elaborate fantasy in which I had somehow acquired her house through trickery or mistake, and that she was justified in trying to reclaim it. The defendant appears to believe that the house in question was always meant to be hers, the psychologist's report stated. She has constructed a narrative in which the plaintiff's purchase of the property was either fraudulent or the result of some cosmic error that needs to be corrected. She shows no insight into the illegality of her actions and continues to maintain that she is the victim of an injustice. The report recommended that Jessica receive intensive psychiatric treatment and be considered a potential threat to my safety. Reading that report was one of the most heartbreaking moments of this entire ordeal. This wasn't just sibling rivalry or jealousy. My sister was genuinely mentally ill, and her illness had focused itself on my house. But the report also vindicated my decision to pursue legal action. Jessica wasn't going to get better on her own, and my family's attempts to minimize her behavior had only enabled her delusions to grow stronger. The week before the trial, Jessica made one final attempt to contact me directly. She somehow got my work email address and sent me a long, rambling message that was equal parts apology and accusation. Sandy, the email began. I know you think I'm crazy, but I need you to understand something. That house has always been meant for our family. When I was pregnant with the twins, I used to drive by and dream about raising them there. I used to imagine family Christmases in that living room and the boys playing in that backyard. I know you worked hard and saved money, but I worked hard, too. I worked hard at being a good mother and a good wife and a good daughter. Doesn't that count for something? Don't I deserve happiness, too? I'm not asking you to give me the house, but maybe we could share it somehow. Maybe you could sell it to me at a discount, or we could work out some kind of payment plan. I know I made mistakes, but I was just so hurt that you didn't include me in such a big decision. We're sisters, Sandy. We're supposed to share our lives with each other. Please don't let this destroy our family. Please think about what Mom and Dad would want. Please remember that I love you, even if I have a bad way of showing it sometimes. The email went on for 3 more paragraphs, alternating between pleading and blaming, between taking responsibility and deflecting it. I forwarded it to my lawyer without responding. Jessica was still living in her fantasy where my house could somehow become our house, where her wanting something badly enough gave her a right to it. But I also saw for the first time genuine pain in her words. She really was suffering. Her delusion was causing her real anguish, and part of me wanted to help her. The problem was that helping her couldn't involve giving in to her demands or dropping the charges. The psychological evaluation had made it clear that Jessica's delusions would only get worse if they were reinforced by getting what she wanted. The case went to court 3 months later. Jessica showed up with a public defender and a story about how this was all a family misunderstanding that had gotten blown out of proportion. But the evidence was overwhelming: the security footage, the social media posts, the testimony from Linda Morrison, the records of Jessica calling my mortgage company. It all painted a clear picture of someone who had deliberately deceived multiple people in an attempt to gain access to property that didn't belong to her. Jessica tried to argue that she had genuinely believed there had been a mistake with the paperwork, but the judge wasn't buying it. "Ms. Williams," the judge said, "even if you genuinely believed there had been an error, the appropriate response would have been to contact your sister directly, not to impersonate her to gain access to the property. The evidence shows that you spent several hours in the house, taking photographs and videos, and making posts on social media as if you owned or were purchasing the property. This goes well beyond investigating a potential clerical error." Jessica was found guilty of identity theft and fraud. She was sentenced to 2 years probation, 100 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution for legal fees and security system costs, totaling about $8,000. More importantly, the restraining order was made permanent. "Jessica is legally prohibited from coming within 500 feet of me or my property, and from contacting any institutions or businesses related to my home ownership. The fallout in my family has been significant. My parents now understand what really happened, and they've cut contact with Jessica until she gets therapy and makes genuine amends. Most of my extended family, however, chose sides, and unfortunately, many of them chose Jessica's side based on her initial, victimized version of events. I've lost relationships with cousins and aunts who think I'm a heartless person who destroyed my sister's life over a misunderstanding. They refuse to look at the evidence or consider that Jessica might have been in the wrong. But you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm sitting in my beautiful Victorian house right now, writing this story in the living room where Jessica once sprawled on the floor pretending she owned the place. It's now December, 9 months after I first bought the house, and 6 months since the court case ended. I've furnished it exactly the way I want it. I've hosted dinner parties for my real friends, the ones who celebrate my successes instead of trying to steal them. I've started a garden in the backyard. Jessica still drives by sometimes. She works across town, so Maple Street is on one of her possible routes home. She doesn't stop or get out of the car. That would violate the restraining order. But my security cameras pick up her minivan slowing down in front of the house. I think she's still waiting for me to change my mind, or for our parents to convince me to forgive and forget and somehow include her in my life here. But that's not going to happen. What Jessica did wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was a calculated attempt to take something that belonged to me because she felt entitled to it. The social media posts prove that she had convinced herself she deserved my house more than I did. And the fact that she's never once apologized, not genuinely, tells me everything I need to know about her character. I've learned that blood doesn't give people the right to violate your boundaries, steal from you, or treat your accomplishments as if they belong to the whole family. I worked for 8 years to buy this house. I sacrificed vacations, nights out, expensive dinners, and countless small luxuries to save every penny I could. This house represents my independence, my hard work, and my future. Jessica wanted to walk in and claim it as her own because she felt entitled to share in my success without having made any of the sacrifices. Some people in my family think I'm cruel for pressing charges and getting a restraining order. They think family should forgive family no matter what. But I think family should respect family enough not to commit crimes against them in the first place. I'm happy in my dream house. I'm happy with my chosen family of friends who celebrate my successes instead of trying to undermine them. And I'm happy knowing that I stood up for myself and refused to let anyone, even my sister, take advantage of me. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you relationships. But keeping toxic relationships costs you your self-respect and your peace of mind. I chose peace. And every morning when I wake up in my beautiful master bedroom, looking out at my garden through those original stained glass windows, I know I made the right choice. The house is mine. I earned it.